We don't often think of China as a maritime power, and when we do, usually the short-lived voyages of Zheng He's navy comes to mind. But, unbeknownst to many, China had already created a permanent, mercantile green water navy 300 years prior. Judging by the time frame in which the navy was constructed, it's reasonable to assume the navy was established in response to the Jurchen Jin threat. Nomads who overran northern China and captured the Chinese capital at Kaifeng in 1127. With income and industrial output now reduced by about half, the Chinese turned to the sea to compensate for lost profit. Emperor Gaozong observed that an emphasis on maritime commerce could be just as lucrative as taxation of commoners, but to suit his goals, Confucian attitudes towards the sea and merchants in general had to be re-examined or revised. Neo-Confucianism became prominent partly because of this, as the 12th century scholar Chen Shun stated, "Goods and wealth are needed for a livelihood and cannot be omitted, so long as one engages in profit-making when the business is proper and acquires a thing when the acquisition is correct. That is righteousness." In other words, Chinese society would become more lenient towards merchants, purely out of necessity, even though merchants were still regarded as one of the lowest social classes. Status aside, the Chinese government worked with the merchants to improve ocean-going junks but also canals and harbors, because inland rivers needed to be protected from the Jin too. The effort resulted in the creation of China's first permanent navy in 1121, and coincided with massive growth for revenues drawn from overseas trade, which quadrupled between 1100 and 1150. Chinese junks dominated the Indian Ocean alongside Arab and Iranian traders to the benefit of Hangzhou, China's new capital. Hangzhou emerged as the greatest and wealthiest city in the world, the epitome of Chinese prosperity during the Southern Song era. But the wealth did not exist without threats, especially since Hangzhou was considered open to attack by sea. That explains the importance of China's navy. Its natural defenses along the Yangtze River and the Pacific could only be effective deterrents in combination with a powerful local navy, while the canals that were so crucial to Chinese agriculture needed naval protection too. China's early navy was put to the test in the 1130s when it attempted to destroy a major pirate base located at Dongting Lake in central China. Paddle wheel boats, known as Flying Tiger warships, were deployed to meet the challenge, seeing great initial success against the pirates. However, once an engineer was captured, the pirates retaliated with their own larger versions of the paddle wheel boat. Undaunted, in 1135 government forces simply lured the pirates into a specific part of the lake where they became stuck in artificially positioned logs and rushes, trapping and destroying the pirate fleet once and for all. But the paddle wheel boat was far from the only designs actively used by the Chinese Navy. Government regulation in shipbuilding industries, combined with the examination of Arab and Indian texts about navigation, enabled the invention of 10 different junk types, 10 different warship types, ferry boats, water tankers, floating restaurants, horse transport ships, manure boats, and the compass. Average Chinese junks roaming the Indian Ocean featured a sternpost rudder, a 100-foot mainmast, an 80-foot foremast, and bamboo sails. Undersides, prows, and sterns were built in a certain way to increase the speed up to 300 miles per day. Pine and woolen wood from Fujian, Zhejiang, and Guangdong provinces made up the bulk of a ship, which was usually compact enough for a crew of 60, 120 tons of cargo in 4 compartments, several sleeping quarters, water caskets, and a kitchen. In reality, these ships were only 100 feet long and 25 feet wide. Slightly larger than the Spanish ships of Christopher Columbus, but almost 4 times smaller than the ships Zheng He sailed 300 years later. Be that as it may, they were considered the best boats in the world during their time, composing the efficient fleet that was the Song Chinese Navy. By the early 13th century, the Chinese Navy boasted a fleet of 600 ships equipped with various weapons like battering rams, catapults, and gunpowder. A crew of 52,000 men operated these ships, patrolling an area from Fujian province to Japan and Korea, as well as China's rivers. In 1161 the Jin challenged Song China's naval supremacy and attempted to cross the Yangtze River. Immediately they received a bloody nose once Yu Yunwen's fleet of 24 paddle wheel boats destroyed the Jin fleet. The engagement was reportedly the first time gunpowder was ever used in battle, as the weapon was launched from catapults that exploded loudly upon impact, frightening and demoralizing the enemy. Not a single Jin soldier survived. A second encounter later the same year had similar results. The outnumbered Song Chinese fleet positioned itself so that the Jin ships could be defeated piecemeal with gunpowder. Subsequently the Jin were forced to call off their attack on Hangzhou, and for the rest of the 12th century China's navy was the most powerful in the world. Yet, in the 13th century the government drastically reoriented its policies again, redeploying experienced sailors to various projects involving labor. Consequently, only around 10% of the Chinese crew were fit for service by 1239. So unsurprisingly, when China faced a more formidable enemy like the Mongols under Kublai Khan, their navy performed less well. The fact that Chinese sailors and merchants, unhappy with government management of their fleet, were choosing to defect to the Mongols did not help. Betrayal of Chinese merchants culminated in the relinquishment of 500 boats to the Mongols from the merchant bloc of Zhuqing and Zhangxian. But even before this, the Mongols were winning, effectively using the land to conquer the sea. Because their conquest of several towns along the Yangtze River allowed 3,000 boats to fall into Mongol possession. Using their own boats against them, the Mongols launched an all-out naval and land assault on the Chinese capital of Hangzhou in 1276. Capitulation was inevitable, but the Chinese resisted for another few years. In 1279, 800 Mongol ships tracked down and seized the junk hosting the Song court. Rather than submit to Mongol authority, the last Song emperor jumped off his deck to drown himself, and with him fell remnants of the Song Chinese navy. However, the thousands of ships bequeathed to the Mongols from Song Chinese merchants would go on to form the basis of the Reign Mongol fleet. An even more powerful navy and a worthy heir of the Song navy that would come to dominate the String of Pearls, much like its Ming Chinese successor. Thanks for watching.